Boom! Here it is, the XS220 by Realacc. You can tell this one here is a stretched X frame, not like the X like its brother. And this one is actually a clone of the new QAV-XS, which stands for X stretched or SX stretched X, I don't know what it was. But this is a clone of that. And this one here is not an exact clone, and I think this was kind of rushed out to try to get onto the hype train by Realacc. And a few reasons, well, the most obvious reason is they called it the X210 race on the sticker on the box instead of having it called the XS220. Also, a lot of these kits are coming out where they're missing this 30mm spacer back here. I got the one up here and it's knurled, but this one back here it did not come with. That's kind of bad. Also, these spacers here are 35mm and they're not knurled. So why would you go from a knurled spacer to a not knurled? I think the not knurled would be a little bit better than not knurled, and that this is kind of a down step for them. But it does come with the spacers, it does come with the camera mount. Now, why would they make this 35mm? Well, the only thing I can think of is they want to put 5 more millimeters of space between the flight board and the power distribution board here up to the camera so you could get a little less angle out of it. Because I think a lot of people were building this and their camera angle was so massive or so angled that when they go to take off, it just gets going too fast because they have to lean it forward so much to see where they're going. And so they wanted to try to do away with that by raising the plate up a little bit. So if you wanted to actually use shorter spacers, you'd have to do some trim work on the carbon fiber pieces here because, you know, they're designed for this length of spacers. Now on this top plate, there's a little bit of thin area right through here where the carbon fiber is cut thin so this thing can fit through there. Now at first I thought that might make a real weak point, which it probably does. But the fact that these carbon fiber pieces are coming up here and helping brace this whole middle section, I don't think it's going to be too big of an issue. And also the distance between here and here is not that great. So I think it should be fine just like it is in the other X210 frames that they've made before. So the question that a lot of people are going to wonder is, can I just get a new main plate and pull the stuff off my old one and put it on the new one? Well, let's find out. So here are 3 Realacc frames, the XS220, the original X210, and the X210 Pro. Now if I was guessing, I would guess that these two here on the outside would have more similarities between them than the X210 and this. And that would be because this upper plate is all kind of fancy, just like this one is too. Well, surprise, surprise, these two are actually more similarly sized. Now I took some measurements from the screw here in the spacer to the screw here in the back and also across the sides. So on the XS220, this front to back spacing is 64.4 and the same thing on the X210. Those are the same. And also back here side to side, they're both 30.4 or 30.3. I might have measured wrong. But the X210 Pro is way more narrow, or way more short, and a little bit more wide than the other two. So if you got an XS220 main plate, you could just replace it with the components off of this one. The X220, you're going to have to reuse the upper plates, so you can't just pull the parts off and stick them on there. In addition to the frame, you also get this Motec power distribution board. This has 5-volt output down here on the bottom, which is what I use to power my flight board. Also has a 12-volt output, which is what I use to power my camera. And then I hook up my video transmitter up here to the VCC, which is really just a direct connection over to the positive. So if you've got a 4S coming in here, it's also going to output 4S here, just like all the ESCs. But I think these pads are a little bit bigger because they're ESC pads. Also comes with your standard XT60 connector, which you can mount up on the top if you want to run your battery on the top, or you can solder it on the bottom if you want to run your battery on the bottom. The X210s are designed to have it run off of the bottom. So here's the frame. Let's get some measurements off of this. The first thing I want to measure is how thick these arms are. This one's coming in at 4.03. This other arm's coming in at 4.02. This one's coming in at 3.96. And hopefully around 4. Yeah, 4.04. Good. So this is actually pretty good in terms of quality on the carbon fiber. Sometimes you'll see one arm's a little bit thicker than the other ones. In this case, one of them was just a hair thinner than the others. Let's go ahead and check these spacers inside here. I believe they're 35. Yep, 35mm spacers. And the spacer up here that I'm missing is a 30mm spacer. If I push real hard, I might be able to reach it up to 30. But like I said, it's missing one, but oh well, that's not too bad of a deal. Hopefully they'll take care of that in the next round of these things that they make. Now on this carbon fiber, these edges are pretty rough. Actually, I shouldn't say rough. I should say just a little bit sharp up on the very corner. It's really grabbing my finger pretty good when I slide it across like this. The plates itself are not dusty, which is surprising for the Realacc because a couple of the other ones I had were dusty. But the cuts look pretty good. The holes up around the edge look pretty good. You can see here they're actually designed for the 2200 size motors or the 1806 size motors, but I don't know why you'd run 1806 motors on this because this is supposed to be fast. Also has these little bumps out here that are supposed to help with impacts to the ground. They're supposed to take the force instead of letting that force get back to your motors. Anyway, let's get this thing weighed up here. Comes in about 88.5, and if I throw on this power distribution board an XT60 connector, adds another 10 grams of weight. So 100 grams of weight is actually okay for a racing quad. Usually you want them down a little bit lower, maybe 90 or 85. But when you get a stretched X, you're going to have a little bit extra carbon fiber in it because of the extra long arms that it has. And that's just something I think you're going to have to deal with when it comes to stretched X frames. But the advantage is that when you're flying, you're not going to have prop wash coming off of this one and coming back to this one as much as you would on a regular X where they'd be a little bit closer together. But that's all kind of theoretical stuff, and we'll just skip all that for now. Here I have my ruler out. I'm going to go ahead and measure from front to back. And it kind of comes out to be about 175. You can't see it very well. 175 from front to back and left to right. If I center this up here, it comes out to be about 135 left to right. Somewhere in there. 135 left to right. And the angled, they said it was 220 on the name of it, and they are not. Actually, they're about right. Right there is 220, and we're actually sitting about 220, where was it? 221 or 222. So yeah, they're real close. 220 frame is what I would have called it too. So here's a 5-inch propeller, and if I center it over the motor hole here, you can see it's actually clearing the frame with a lot of space there. Usually they're a little bit more tight than that, but I think the stretched X is really just pushing it forward more and out a little bit more than normal. Also back here in the back, if I center it over this hole, you can see it's also clearing the frame with no problem. Now you got to remember that these things not only have to clear the frame, they also have to clear the propeller coming from the other side. And you can see here, this is not crossing the center of this quad, so it shouldn't have any problems. Here's a 6-inch propeller. Can it spin 6-inch propellers? No. It's going to crash into the frame, and you'd have to trim these down. You might be able to fit like a 5.5, but then a 5.5 is going to run into problems where it's going to be touching the propeller across from it. Same thing up here in the front. This 6-inch is just too long to spin past the frame. So you can only fit 5-inch propellers on here. You could try your luck with 5.5, but I don't have any of those to show or to test with. A while back I reviewed another frame called the Whipit INH frame, and it's actually made by Detroit Multi-Rotor. And on this one you can see it is a stretched X, and you can see how close the props are together up here at the front. If I turn this a little bit, you can see how far apart these propellers are from side to side. Now when you have stretched X's, the companies usually want to push the props a little closer together in the front, and so sometimes you get a little bit of prop inside your camera view. However, if you tilt the camera up enough, you don't see the props at all, and everything is good. Now you could have a pretty wide angle lens and actually see it, I guess, if you wanted to. But the Whipit frame flies a lot differently than standard X frames. Like I was saying earlier, you just have so much more accuracy and control on your pitch axis. Now when you go to fly it the first time, you will notice it right away. Well, maybe you will. I did. And it flew just a little bit differently than the other ones. And when I was flying, I felt like it just had a lot more, it wouldn't descend quite as quickly, and it wouldn't ascend quite as quickly. It felt like it was a little bit more controlled, like I'm going down toward the gate and actually throttling it toward the gate rather than letting off the throttle and letting it kind of fall toward the gate, it was just weird on the way that it flew. I really do like it though. So between the X210 and the XS220, which one would I recommend you buy? Well, the X210 has flown excellent for me, which is why I actually have 3 of these that are built. But the XS220 with the stretched X, I think it's just going to fly so much better and so much, mostly better in races because of its pitch control that it has. Like I said, this Whipit frame from Detroit Motors has flown excellent for me. And the only reason I haven't flown it a lot is because I usually crash it and then my arms get loose because they're just bolted on. Oh, and in fact, I'm even missing a screw there. That's good, I'm missing a screw. But they're bolted on with the 2 screws, and so I don't think they hold real well as compared to something where it's a whole main plate. The whole main plate is just a solid piece of carbon fiber and you don't have anything on there to break loose. So I think this one will fly actually better than my Whipit frame. So based on speculation, I'd say buy this one. Also, this is the hype train right now. Everybody wants stretch decks. But like I said, I've also flown this one real well in races and it has performed excellent for me. So it's hard for me to say which one I actually prefer at this point. So this is the Realacc XS220. I do have plans to build this out, but it's kind of in line now behind some other projects I'm working on. The X5S here that I'm hoping to get done soon. And also I got this new 4-inch quad called the Arrow, made by Kinetic Aerial, that I want to get this flying also. This one uses 4-inch, this one uses 5-inch. These are 2700 kV motors. In fact, if these turn out well, I may actually use the same 2700 kV motors, 2750 kV motors on this quad here, depending on how this does. If it doesn't kill my batteries or suck down too much juice. Anyway, the XS220 stretched X quadcopter from Banggood, made by Realacc. I think this is going to be a pretty fun quad to get built and start flying, and I think we're going to start seeing more and more stretched X frames come out of the woodwork from more and more companies as people start to realize how much better they fly. And so that's my opinion. Don't quote me on it, but hopefully I'm right. Anyway, the Realacc XS220 from Banggood. If you have any questions about this, leave them down in the comments. I will try to help you out as best I can. And as always, thanks for watching.